morning, good evening, wherever you're joining from. I am Abhinav Agarwal, curator of the Indic Book Club, and I have with us, and we have with here today, Anuradha, the author of the book, The Friendless God. If I can get this to show, well, okay, I will show it just as as soon as I switch off my virtual background. So, uh, Anuradha is a financial journalist, historian, commentator, an archivist, and a novelist. And I'm very, very fascinated with the archivist part of this. And I'll ask you, as we get through this Q&A. And she wrote in 2017 this this book called uh, "The Friendless God." And it says it's a Kudanda's search for Lord Ram, and which brought him to Ram Janam Bhoomi Babri Masjid. And the back of the book says that The Friendless God is a novel set in modern India and tracks the lives of three individuals, one of whom loves, the second hates, and the third makes use of Lord Ram. Kudunda is fascinated by Lord Ram but is unable to worship him because he faces resistance from his strong-willed mother, Vedehi. And for street smart orphan Raman, Lord Rama is another tool to move ahead in life. And the novel traces the lives of these three and their different equations with Lord Rama. Its denouement happens on the day millions converged in Ayodhya to lay claim to the land they considered the birthplace of Rama. Now, I'll give you little bit of background. When I first got this copy of this book, I will straight away admit I wasn't sure what to make of it, because often enough we have books written on Rama and Ayodhya, and which leave us slightly, less than good taste in the mouth. When I started reading this book, I was struck by two or three things. First of all, it's a very, very evocative book. The language, the prose just moves you beyond words. The emotions it evokes, and how it ties in the three characters and their lives, and how and when they intersect, and how they lead us to that fateful day in Ayodhya. I think is frankly nothing short of a stunning work, in my opinion. It is one of those books that I would wholeheartedly recommend to anyone and everyone. And when the opportunity came to do this Q&A with Anuradha, I was, absolutely delighted. And today is the 5th of December, so I think uh, we have an even more opportune time and occasion to talk to her about this book. So with that, Anuradha, welcome. And can you hear us? I think she is having some audio issues. So I am going to ping her and see if she is online. Yes, I think she's having some internet issues. So what I'm going to do is I want to read out uh, a couple of passages from the book, and we'll see if Anuradha can join us. So there is Vedehi, who is Kodanda's mother, and she used to sing Tyagraj Kritis, and for reasons that are explained in the book, she stopped singing them. And she also, then the book tells us, develops an aversion to, she doesn't want to hear, she doesn't want to talk about, she doesn't want anything to do with Lord Rama in her life. Her son, ironically enough, is named Kodanda. And Kodanda, despite his mother's best intentions and efforts, he is inexorably drawn to Lord Rama in one way or the other. Then you have Dashrath, who is a small-time politician who also sees Rama as a way of advancing his political career. Then you have Raman, who's a very street smart guy, and who also somehow ends up in this book with, you know, coming up with things and schemes and a way to get ahead in life by hitching on the bandwagon that was gathering steam at the time. And the book is, if you're, and I would definitely encourage you to go in and pick your copy up. This book was published in 2017, and it's been published by Moonlight Books, and it is available on Amazon and other websites. So definitely do get hold of this book. I'm going to see if, So we don't have Anuradha here. She has dropped off for some internet issues, I think. I'm unable to reach her. So let's hold off for a couple of minutes more. And hi, Anuradha, can you hear us? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. I'm so sorry. There was some technical problem and I got disconnected. Internet.
No issues. So I was telling our viewers about the Friendless God and the the characters in there, and I talked about how Vedehi is she sort of wants to purge her life of any references to Lord Rama, but her son, who's as I said, ironically named Kudunda, he's inexorably drawn towards everything about Lord Rama. So let us step back, and I want to ask you the very first question: what were the seeds for this story, and how did you come up with the idea of this story, of this book?
First of all, I haven't formally this talk. I must thank Indic Book Academy Book Club for this talk and having me here on this platform. Now, the seed for this novel is basically those of us who grew in the 90s. This Ram Janma Bhoomi was the one which was, virtually all the newspapers were talking about this. This was the topic for discussion. This was what hogged the headlines. Political discussion was around this event, this movement actually, and which finally, of course, culminated on December 6th. And and in those days,
Anuradha,
information was very slow to come to all of us. So
can I suggest one thing?
Understand
your
the image
video
in a certain way.
Your video is I think freezing a little bit. So to help with the bandwidth, do you want to switch off your webcam, and we'll try with just the audio?
Okay, so you're not able to see the video is freezing?
The video is freezing, and the audio is also a little spotty.
Okay, that is a pity. Okay, then I'll wait. Let me see how to. I have to stop the video. Does it help now?
I think so. I definitely, yes.
Okay.
So sorry. Please continue.
Yeah. So as I said, that this was the 90s when the whole debate and the political debate, political headlines were all around Ram Janmabhoomi. And what was happening was, on one hand, there was the information that we were getting was very different from what was politically happening. So it was a very intriguing experience for all of us. And that's when I decided to write about this particular incident.
So how did you, so one is to write about the incident and all, but what led you to kind of come up with this very, very interesting, theme where you have characters, each one of them is named Rama or related with Lord Rama, and how do you then figure out, because if you are writing a fiction novel, one of its main purposes has to be that there has to be a story in there. It has to appeal to the reader. It has to take us through some sort of a journey and end in a climax. How how did you come up with these three different very characters, four characters actually?
Yeah, actually, at the root of it, I wanted to explore the theme about what is the kind of conflict that can come about between a person who is religious and a person who doesn't believe in God. So, what are the kind of conflicts that can come about? And that is represented between literally the battle between Vaidehi and Kodanda. So that is what I wanted to actually highlight through the novel. That is, what are the points of friction with people with such differing worldviews. And then there are also people who are perhaps using religion. So what religion, the other theme which I wanted to explore was what religion means to different people. So for some people it may just be a personal experience, it's a personal search, and for others it may be a way to make it better in life, a way to politically get some gains. So I wanted to explore that aspect also, that what one common Rama, what he can mean to different people, and how they can use that deity, that God, that idea to make some sense of their own lives. And that we see happen directly with Kodanda, with Raman and Dasharatha, and in a very indirect way with Vaidehi, because she's almost consumed by that hatred for that God, that she is literally living that hatred. That's what is driving her. Otherwise, there's really no meaning in the lives of both Kodanda and Vaidehi. They're leading very, very ordinary lives, but they're driven by this God. And that's what I wanted to actually explore, that one is driven in a certain way and the other person is driven in a completely opposite manner.
Yes, very much so. And if for me, it was very interesting as to try and figure out who the real protagonist is, so to say, because there is Vaidehi and then there is Raman. And actually, it is Raman who ends up traveling to Ayodhya. But in many cases, I really felt that the whole book is underpinned by Vaidehi's journey. Even though the physical journey is made by Raman, the metaphysical or the subtextual journey in the book is taken by Vedehi. And in there, one of the turning points in her life is her experience with the Tyagaraja Kritis, right? So
Yes.
for some or for many who are not familiar with with Tyagaraja Kritis, do you want to tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, actually, the that that is a turning point. Music is actually the music plays a very important role in the book, and where there is some dwelling about Vaidehi's characters, because later on there is not much exploration of Vaidehi's character except that how she is combating Kodanda. But in the beginning is where a slice of her life is shown, where she tries to make a life out of as a career. Tries to make a career as a Carnatic music singer, and
Right.
this has happened in India. This has happened in Carnatic music circles in the past. Like a lot of people who are Tamil speaking, they don't. See, Tyagaraja is one of the great composers of the Carnatic Trinity, and he has composed songs mainly on Lord Rama, and his songs are in Telugu. So one of the accusations against Tamilians who sing Telugu kritis is that they mispronounce the words. They don't get the essence of that language. And in between, there was a movement in Tamil Nadu where people were saying that don't sing a lot of these Telugu and Sanskrit kritis songs. Kriti is actually a song. So don't sing Telugu and Sanskrit songs. Sing more of Tamil songs. So she is in a way a victim of that movement. On one hand, she's herself not able to pronounce the words as well as she should. And on the other hand, when she actually tries to sing in Tamil, she finds other problems, of course, there. So the very fact that when she is trying to, she encounters true problems with Tyagaraja and Rama. One, where she's not allowed to sing those songs anymore. And second, when she sings them, she has a problem with the pronunciation. So that, in a way, leaves her very bitter, because music is what has given her survival. Music is what has given her a life. She's a single woman, so she's trying to make a livelihood out of music. And when she's not able to do it, She is actually against anything that represents this music and the God who is the God who she identifies with this music at that time, you know.
Fascinating. And the other thing is the experience of, and I earlier I said Raman. No, it's Kudunda. Kudunda is Vedehi's son, and he makes the physical journey to Ayodhya. So I messed that bit up. So my apologies. The second one is Kudunda's experience, or his sort of initiation into the devotion of Lord Rama through kalamkari. And
Yeah.
there's a fascinating, I think, subplot right there in itself. Do you want to, without giving out too many spoilers to readers, do you want to talk a little bit about that aspect of it, and why is kalamkari such a what is so special about it, and what does Kudanda find so special about it?
Yeah. See, Kodunda's journey is because when he is obviously not able to worship God in the way normally people worship, which is go to a temple, then he starts looking for Rama in different things. For example, he looks out for Rama in gardening, where he tries to grow tulsi, or then he tries to look out for Rama in music, or else. And then one of the key things that he does is through the work of Kalamkari. See, Kalamkari is a work which is very well known in Andhra, because the novel is set in a way in Andhra Pradesh. And traditionally, the themes have been religious in nature. And but Vaidehi is she wants to take him away from the religion. So what she does is that she chance she stumbles upon a Muslim kalamkari painter, and she thinks that the Muslim painter will be, he is hardly going to teach Rama painting of Rama to Kodanda. You see, so there the irony of life comes. So this Muslim painter who does the other, see, kalamkari has two themes. One is the Hindu themes, and one is what is the Islamic influence, where the non-Hindu themes are block printed, you see, and painted, block printed or painted. So there, what happens? She thinks that Rameemuddin, in a way, is a safe candidate. But what Kodanda realizes, and he figures out that he can make Rameemuddin also teach him the kalamkari of the religious kalamkari. He can draw God through kalamkari. And for Rameemuddin, it is also going back into the very ancient past, where perhaps some of his ancestors would have drawn this. So there's a flashback. There's not really a flashback, but it is hinting at possibly what could have been also his Hindu roots. You see, but he's of course a practicing Muslim, but he's generous enough to teach Kodanda how to draw Rama through kalamkari. So the whole journey goes, it looks very harmless. I mean, I took some time to explore that because I like kalamkari, and because it looks like a very, from Vaidehi's point of view, it looks like a very innocent journey. But in there also there is some there is a catch there for her, and she realizes to her utter shock that her child has been only painting Rama even there with Rameemuddin,
So this is also, it's very interesting, this particular point, that much as the mother Vedehi tries to steer Kudanda away from Rama, Kudanda ends up finding himself drawn, finds his life and his experiences intersecting with Lord Rama in one or more ways. So that is one part, but isn't there also a streak of rebelliousness in Kudanda that I think comes out beautifully?
Yes, in fact, if you just read it, one may think the character of Kodanda is a very he's almost spineless, because he never openly, or he's never aggressive, but he does have his own sense of character, and he does have his own sense of mind, and that comes very early in the book, where the first time he kind of rebels because his mother has actually taken him away from school. She doesn't believe that the schooling will help him in any way, and he is not intelligent enough to go to the technical school where he can learn some skills. So he's just sitting at home and like doing household chores, because he of course finds peace in that, and he's happy doing it. But then suddenly he realizes that he finds some book where he finds the story of Rama, and he starts memorizing that story. He starts to internalize that story, and that's actually where he first kind of rebels against his mother, because he wants to do. And see, in our people can control the way we look, the way we dress, the way we sing, the way we worship, physically and in the outside world. They can control us, but how we dwell upon something in our minds, nobody can control. And that's where Kodanda has actually found his own power, really speaking, because in his mind he has so-called memorized that story, he has internalized it completely, and he's able to live every moment with that deity that he is very fond of. You see, so those are the ways in which, of course, I don't want to tell too much about the story, because I want readers to read and discover for themselves what are the places in this cat and mouse game between the mother and son, where he tries to learn something. And then, of course, Vaidehi, being the strong-willed woman that she is, she kind of cuts it, she nips everything in the bud, you see, or just when it's about to flower.
Correct. Very much. I think people should read this book to, to not only uncover the entire plot and how the story progresses, but one thing I hope people, readers, get away from the book, like I did, was the very moving language. And I want to, how did you, so there is both an art and craft to writing, as everyone says. The craft is one thing, and we'll leave that aside for just a few minutes. But coming to the art part of it, right? How did you, make the prose so moving? And it's not, I'll say it is not overly sentimental. And the only word I can come up with is it just moves you as you go through the book. It just moves you very, very much. So I want to ask you, and the reason is all of us have at times when we write or when we want to write, there are very strong emotions we want to express, but for lack of enough knowledge, for lack of enough skill in the craft, we are sometimes unable to translate with full fidelity our emotions onto paper. But in your book, I don't think that has been an issue at all. The emotions have come through beautifully in it. So I personally am very interested in this, and I'm sure others would be too.
Yeah. See, the challenge when I was writing the novel was, I had to keep in mind the personality that Kodanda was. There is just, he's a no, there is no, there is no frill around him. So I wanted the language to be as bare as it could be, and the drama to be as uh, as minimalistic, because both Kodanda and even Vaidehi, she's a woman of few words, and she doesn't make she doesn't say anything more than what is required. So that, and because I was using fewer words, I was able, I thought, I mean, of course, honestly, I don't know how I've put I really don't know how it worked, but maybe that was what I was trying to recreate, was just that raw emotions, and which are just not at all overstated. They're just very ordinary people, and through their ordinariness, they are able to project a very their deep thoughts, you see. So that's how I kept it very minimalistic, and I kept the prose and the sentiment. Really, I didn't want to exceed that sentiment at all, because if you see both their backgrounds, they come as very, very ordinary people, and in real life we don't say dramatic things, honestly. That, I mean, that's how I feel. We don't say dramatic things. We just live life, and that's what I wanted to explore.
So essentially, you're saying that you wanted it to be understated and to let the reader interpret and imbibe it, rather than to put it in front of him, sort of put it in his face.
Yes, I definitely wanted that only because, see, while Kodanda is of course the protagonist, and in some way maybe my empathy was there, I did not want Vaidehi to be demonized. So there also I did not want to, I didn't want to say anything more than what was needed, because each the reader of course has to go through their own emotions, and they have the privilege, really. I mean, just as the writer has the privilege of communicating something, the reader should have the privilege of saying that, I think this character is this is what the writer, this is what the character is trying to convey. And I thought that would happen only if I could say fewer things and not explain a lot. And this is true of even the other two characters, like Raman and Dasharatha also, because they also, there is a lot of exploring of their minds and what they go through and their emotions. But I just try to keep everything to the bare minimum, really.
And I think it has worked beautifully. I think at least I can tell you from my reading of the book, it's worked wonderfully, and
Thank
which
you.
leads which leads me to a few more questions before we open it up for Q&A. And we have several questions that have come in, so I want to leave enough time for that also. The first one is that uh, so are there any, okay, so let's start with, this book came out in English. Are there, first of all, plans of translating this into other languages? And are you, not are you, no, when are you going to present us with your next book?
Okay, there is a Hindi translation of the work that is underway, because I felt that at least, I mean, I since Ram Janmabhoomi is in the is in North India, and I thought I'll get that translated in Hindi. There is also a plan to translate it in Tamil, because I'm a Tamilian, so maybe just the sentiment of it is made me do that. So the Hindi translation, of course, is to work is happening on it. And of course, I'm a slow writer, so there is another novel that is coming. I think that should at least come hopefully in the next year. I mean, it should happen. So I am working on my next novel, and that should, I think, 2021 should be the year when it sees the form of a book.
Excellent. That's something to look forward to. 2021. 2020 has been a remarkable year in many respects. So I hope
Yeah.
2021 brings us a lot more, happy and good news. So this is great. The second your writing influences, and in that, I'll start off by asking you. So there are several versions, recensions of the Valmiki Ramayana. Which ones which ones you think have left a lasting impression on you?
See, because I grew up in Delhi, see, a lot of the kathas and the Ram Leelas and all were based on the Tulsi Ramayana, because it is really Tulsi Ramayana that elevates Ram into a full-fledged god. You see, there is the devotion is very clear there, and whether it is Hanumanji or whoever, they are looking at Ram as their Bhagavan, and that is the Priya Bhagavan, that is the dear God. So that actually has had its influence on me, because I grew up in Delhi. And of course, much later, when as an adult, I fully studied Valmiki Ramayana. I mean, I read through the Valmiki Ramayana, which is a style that I also wanted to actually imbibe, where, of course, I'm not poetic at all, but the using few words to convey an emotion, using little, I mean, saying things in brevity, is what I learned when I studied the Valmiki Ramayana. It's very well said, very well written, and the greatness of a human being is shown in the Valmiki Ramayana, and that I was very much influenced by. As a Bhagavan, the Tulsi Ramayana conveys that message very clearly, but as Ram as a human avatar, and Ram as an avatar who does swadharma, that left its impact on me, because I felt that that's something that we should all do. Swadharma is doing one's duty, whether it is secular, whatever, in our family or in society. That's the most important thing, and he keeps doing that. So that
Correct.
influenced me.
Correct. Fascinating. And I will admit that both the Ramayans that you talked about, the Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas and the Valmiki Ramayana, are also favorites of mine. And you're so right. Both of them bring out different aspects of it, and I think Anyone who's read the Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas, the poetry of it, and it just leaves you, I think, so moved. So the second question was, now coming to what was your writing schedule, style, and all. And the reason is that many people want to write, but they are intimidated because they look at best-selling authors and the rock stars of the writing world, and that excuse me, seems to be a world that is so inaccessible, inapproachable, that I think many people are simply intimidated and put off. So for people who want to get started on a book, they have a story in their mind. There is something that they want to share. They want to tell to a wider world, and perhaps not in a blog or an article form, but there's a story that is inside of them. What is your advice to them?
Well, my advice would be like I'm just just an ordinary woman or ordinary person. My advice would is to anyone who wants to write is that please go ahead and write, because what you write is yours. It is unique, and later we can get professional help to spruce up our copies. We can get professional help to market, and today there are enough platforms to even publish your book. But as you said, of course, the world out there of celebrity writers and people who will at every step say that you are not capable of writing, your writing is not worthy of being published. There are enough people who will say. But that's I think that's not what we should just completely ignore that. And if we have a story to tell, we should just go ahead and write it, because that's like 90% of the work done. The remaining part of the sprucing up, the cleaning up of the copies, and that can be done because I'm a journalist. By my day job is that of a journalist, and I know that every copy can be improved and improved and improved to infinity. So there is no end to that. So let's not be worried that our copies are bad and we are not writing well enough. We have a story to say. Just go ahead and say it, and you will get published. And that we should not be deterred by that. Everybody is deterred. Even I am still deterred, because that's why admitting anything in public that I have written this or I written that is very, very it's a scary moment. But I think we should just go ahead and write it, because it's like I always say to all my friends and to whoever, that every person, I'm not talking that as a woman, every woman gives birth to a child, wants to give birth to a child. Now, not that every child is the star, or not that every child will go on to become anything great, but to each mother, her child is unique and special. So that's how I look at writing also. To each of us, our writing is unique, and just get it out there.
That is such inspiring advice, and just get it out, get it, put pen on paper and write your story, and worry about the finer details later. I
Yes.
think this is wonderful advice. I'm going to go to a couple of questions, a few questions that we have. So there is one by Geeta Krishnan who asks, being a debut novel, given a chance, would you be writing a sequel set in the 2020s as a progression of the characters? Now, again, without revealing too much about it, can you tell us, do you plan on writing a sequel at some point?
Actually, I do want, because a lot of people have asked me that that a sequel just makes natural sense. But it is just that I there are certain characters that I'm best I have more interest in. So I want to see how I can mm, uh, progress that. How can I make that characters come back or bring life into them again? So where are they? Where do they stand? So I have looked at it and I have thought about it, and I haven't, tell you the truth, I haven't come to um, any satisfying answers there on how I should move my characters forward. Because my second novel, my other novel, is not about these. That's not a sequel, actually. It's in a totally different milieu. It's set in a different world. So I haven't yet thought of it. But at some point, whenever I think that one of these characters, because I don't want to use the same character, now between the characters who are there in the novel, I want to use it from another point of view. The sequel should be from another angle altogether. That's what I feel. So far I have not been inspired, or I haven't found a satisfying peg to peg the sequel, I must say that.
We will wait. I'm sure, when the inspiration strikes, when you figure, what point of view you want to use, I'm sure the story will come out. We'll look forward to it. Now, the second question is, and you kind of, addressed it, but the question is from, okay, anonymous attendee. What is the rationale for depicting Kudunda as spineless? And you kind of, dwelled upon his rebelliousness, but do you want to, address this question?
Okay. See, I wanted to actually, uh, I wanted to highlight in society how there are some people who have power with them. And that could be any kind of power, you see, intellectual power, financial, physical, whatever power. And then there are those who are powerless. And then those who are powerful are always setting the narrative, they are setting the tone, they are setting the tone for everything, you see. Now I wanted to represent these two in a family setup. And traditionally in a family, the parent is definitely more powerful than a child. So I mean, they can have a very big hold over how a child thinks. The thinking can be totally taken over by a parent, and that's what I wanted to highlight. So when I wanted to highlight his spinelessness, it is basically projecting all those of us who are just naive, perhaps, or innocent, or not so cunning in our worldview. You see, we are willing to be, we are okay to be where we are, and we don't have any great agenda. But those who are powerful may have an agenda. They come with more intelligent ideas, and they want to superimpose these ideas on the rest of us who appear to be not so smart or not so strong. So that spinelessness is in that context I wanted to. Spinelessness, of course, is a very negative connotation, you see. But what I wanted to show is somebody who will not is not going to fight for anything, because they are not competing really. They're non-competitive. They're not competing with anybody for anything in this world. So they're not fighting for name or fame or even ideological victory over others, which in some ways perhaps Vaidehi is her character points to that, having an ideological victory over somebody, making somebody think the same way as you think, you see.
Very, very true. Very true. Uh, okay, so let's go to some more questions. So there's a comment by Shankar Subramanian who says that more than the diction, understanding the meaning of the verses helps bring out the song and Tyagaraja's emotions well. And for example, Banturithi is one example that he gives. From Janvi Krishnan, there's a question. Who is your inspiration to write Vedehi's character?
Okay, that's interesting, because actually there's not any one percent, because see, I mean, truth be told, all fiction writers are just cooking up these stories in their minds. So there are no inspirations in that sense, because these are not based on any real life people. But the inspiration in a way is uh, all those people who are so who can really take charge of our minds by giving us, by saying that their ideas and their way of thinking is right, and how forcefully sometimes, how smoothly sometimes they're able to work around our minds. So that's what inspired me. That idea is what inspired me to write Vaidehi. See, even in those instances, without giving away too much of the plot, she's a trained musician. But what she will do is that she will try to make Kodanda sing Carnatic music without any lyrics, you see, so that he doesn't have to sing about gods. He just has to he has to just sing the notes like Sari Gama Pada Nisa, because she thinks that each raga is so beautiful, each raga has got some sound in it, and that music is nice. So you don't have to sing about a god. Now that idea is those ideas exist in societies. So Vaidehi is really the what is it called, the a potent mixture of such ideas, you see.
Interesting. It is. I mean, I think when we come across a very strongly etched character, I think we all try and find parallels with real life characters. So it's interesting. Uh, so Rekha A has a question. I would like to know more about the research process that Anuradha must have gone through on Kalamkari, on music. How was that process? And she adds, please translate into Telugu also.
Yes, I must translate to Telugu because after all, this book has it is there in a Telugu speaking world. See, Bhadrapuram is actually what I had in mind is Bhadrachalam, which is called the Ayodhya, Dakshin Ayodhya. It's called. You see, Bhadrachalam is called Dakshin Ayodhya. So that was my reference point when I visited Bhadrachalam, and when I visited the places around that. Around Bhadrachalam, those were my really inspiration to locate the story. Of course, I changed because it's a fiction. I didn't want to give any real life names to the place. It is definitely Telugu based, and definitely I want to translate into Telugu. The research work is, of course, I have researched, worked in libraries, books. I've read up books on kalamkari or newspaper articles or whatever information I have managed to get. That's the research I have done. And then even for music, because I myself have, all South, like all middle class, like most middle class South Indian girls, even I have learned some music and I made use of that. And, being a Tamilian, I also did the massacre. I had my share of massacre in Tyagaraja. So, those all came from my own personal experiences, you see. And yes, the kalamkari and the geographies of traveling. I also did a fair amount of research on, you see, Raman's character, who gets involved in the Naxal movement in Andhra Pradesh, you see, what it means. Because, when we used to travel in those parts of Andhra Pradesh, there's a very, Medak and all those, what is modern day Telangana, current day Telangana. Those were all areas which had a lot of this Naxal problems at that time. So I wanted to bring some of that into the novel, you see.
There's a follow-up question from Rekha again. Did your experience of being a journalist help to flesh out the characters?
Yes, to some extent, yes. More than flesh out the characters. See, when we are writing a story, when we are as journalists, what we do is that we have to always ask ourselves why, when, and how. You see, when we write a story, and we have to communicate whatever ideas we want to communicate in the shortest possible manner, because that's what. Especially because I worked in news agencies. There you have to be very precise with your words and quickly communicate your ideas. So that helped me a lot in how to quickly communicate ideas. And then, of course, being a journalist, of course, you understand what influence news can make on people. You see, that the narrative is determined by those who write the news. That was something that I internalized being a journalist myself, yeah.
So true. So true. And I think what we see playing out often enough is a clash of narratives as to who gets the power to set the narrative. And I think you're right. The role of a journalist is to get the story out in the most precise form. And I think that's come out really well in the book. Next question is from Devi Mishra. And the question is, the ideas as well as the events contained in your novel are quite contemporary, since it is written in the wake of the Ram Janambhoomi movement. Your book is titled The Friendless God. It suggests that the god Rama is friendless, but in the novel, there are characters like Kudunda who are devoted to him, not for the sake of any ulterior motive. A genuine love, I think, is at the heart of his love for Rama. So, what is the message you wish to convey through the title? And Janvi Krishnan has a question that is very similar to this one, so I'll read that out also. Does Lord Ram have any friends? This question is asked by Ratnam Venkatesh, Janvi writes.
Okay, see, the Friendless God, the way it begins is that it is it was in the context of, the novel has a certain plot of why it is called Friendless, because some poet is singing some song saying that, you are friendless, and let me be friends with you, because only those who don't have friends, you can befriend only those who don't have friends, because if everyone had a lot of friends, then they won't need our friendship, So that's the context in the novel. That is the way the title gets it. But the larger question of why the Friendless God I chose as a title was, you see, here was, the historical context. Here was what many people thought, many people believed was the birthplace of Rama. And whatever be the historical context, it was so difficult for people to build a temple for Rama in his own birthplace. I mean, honestly, that was what was made me feel. I mean, Rama must have been really friendless, because for hundreds of years, a temple could not come at his own birthplace. See, that was the undercurrent of why the title was. I chose that title because even after December 6th, when the mosque came down, okay, the mosque came down, but that didn't mean that the temple came up. You see, that was the irony of it all. See, when the mosque was brought down, the temple didn't come up, and it took almost another 25 years for the temple to come up. So there itself, that was the question, that honestly, Ram is really friendless in his own birthplace, because it has taken forever for that temple to turn up. You see.
That is so true. That's such a sad commentary on the kind of society I think we have chosen to build for ourselves, and I think it certainly leaves us with some questions I think we need to answer. I'll ask the next one, which has come from Shankar Subramaniam again. Was this written when you were in India or in Singapore?
I started writing it in India, but most of it got written in Singapore when I was in Singapore.
Okay.
The idea came in India, but when I migrated to Singapore, that's when I started writing it.
Okay. The next question is from Geeta Krishnan. What has been the harshest criticism of your novel till date?
Okay, one of the criticism that comes is that I have portrayed Vedehi in a very insensitive manner. That is one of the criticisms that has come about. I must say that I have not been as empathetic to her as I would have been to as I have been to Kudunda. And because most of my readers are also my friends who also happen to be women, and they have said that why is it that you have been so you're not at all empathetic to the character, and that has been one of the criticisms against the novel, you see.
So how do you in this talk you have covered some of those points, but uh, so after you wrote the book and when you were doing your editing process and refining the text and other things, did you feel the need at any point that Vedehi's character needed to be softened up or made as some people have said, that more empathetic, or this was exactly how you wanted to portray the character, and using, again, as you said, a minimalistic style, so that people would be left free to come up with their own interpretations?
Yes, I did, because see, as I was advised that I should take the advice of all people, all especially my editors, and I must listen to them and I must follow all their advice. My editor did point out to me that I had to give more meat to Vaidehi's character. I had to give her some more context, because I was not giving her any context. And believe me, I actually wrote about a good 50 pages explaining her character and making and giving her more context than what I had given. But when I read it again, I felt it didn't sit uh, with any of what I wanted to convey, because I wanted to just convey the idea that we are like this, just like that. There is no reason why we behave in a certain way. There is a reason, of course, why we behave in a certain way, but there is no great reason why we behave in a certain manner. And I didn't want any justification of that, you see. I didn't want to justify that, she is like this because this has happened to her and that's happened to her, and that's a backstory. I didn't want to give anybody a backstory. There is a backstory to her, which it's very small, which is,
Correct.
and people can make their own. So after writing about good 50 pages on her, I just did away with all that. I mean, I don't know if it was my own ego or pride. I mean, all authors have some issues. They have some baggage. I don't know if it's that, but
No, and I think I think that has worked wonderfully. At least my personal experience after reading the book is that it worked very, very well, because often enough we find authors who are too self-indulgent and they want to. I think they probably are very, very hesitant to cut out even one word from their book. So if you say, you wrote 50 pages and then you decided to leave them out, I think the book is much, much better for having left that out, and to leave us with, with just what you have put in the book.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I definitely. We have one question from Vajanti. And she asks, was there any hostility towards the theme you chose or the background in which you set it? Though you're not making any political commentary or passing judgments on the issue, did you get questioned about the background?
Okay, um, I would think that the very fact that I struggled to get it published, I mean, I could have got, I would have been rejected for many reasons. But the very fact that I was rejected by, I mean, virtually nobody gave me any space to publish this itself, I felt was maybe because people did not like the idea, and they they just didn't want to because honestly the book is completely, there is politics in the book, but it doesn't take any particular stand. It's not taking any stand actually, and it is and definitely it is not naming, it is not at all abusive, or there's nothing in it in that sense, because not because I want to be politically correct, but because those characters are there. I mean, if you look at a character like Kudunda, it is impossible that he can even raise his voice, leave alone abuse somebody, so there is no question of any of that. But yes, perhaps the fact that you see uh, later when we talk about this, now I'm explaining all this in a context in which I wrote. Now when I try to explain this context, some people are not very happy with it. You see, they'll say that you're trying to glorify the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. You see, that's something that people have said. But honestly, that's not how I look at it. I mean, as a journalist, that if in today's newspaper has certain headlines, whether you like it or not, those headlines are going to be there. So Ram Janmabhoomi, whatever be the outcome, and whoever likes it or doesn't like it, it remains as perhaps one of the most important political and social events of modern India. So one cannot wish it away. One cannot just ignore it. So there has been that kind of criticism, at a very, very subtle, of course, that, perhaps the novel, you know, one of the criticisms that I've got is that, the novel tries to be very neutral most of the time, but then later the author shows her true colors. I mean, whatever that means, I mean, and believe me, that's fine, because if somebody's reading 300 pages of my novel, they have a very, very good, they have the right to comment and criticize and make all the comments that they can. And to me, that's not an issue at all. But that's been one of the criticisms, perhaps, that, it is trying to glorify this Ram Janmabhoomi movement, or that it is, by not giving empathy to Vedehi, maybe it is not looking at the other point of view. You see, that has been the criticism.
I think you're right. I mean, the kinds of comments and feedback, criticisms that have come by way of your for your book, and that you pointed out, I think is in itself suggestive of the fact that the book has provoked a lot of thinking on the part of the reader, which I think is in every case a good thing. If people end up questioning, asking, thinking about the book, I think the author has succeeded brilliantly, like you have.
Thank you.
We have a couple of more questions. So, Devi Mishra asks, what is your experience with your publisher? Did you hire editors before submitting your manuscript to your publisher? Can you suggest any editor you consider worthy of consultation?
See, my book was published by Moonlight Books. I mean, there's Jyotsna Khandelwal. She's a publisher based out of Delhi, and she's done a good job publishing my book. And because she was able to see the potential, because after once we get tons of rejection letters, you almost start believing that your novel is not worth publishing. You yourself start believing in it. So she did immediately come up with the idea, and she encouraged, and she said, I think there is potential in this novel, and we will get it done. So that was a good thing. Yes, I hired an editor. I had, in fact, two editors. The first editor was basically just to hire all, to basically see that the plot was cogent, it was clear, and the ideas were flowing well. So that was one set of editing I got done. And then another set of editing I got done was like basically dotting the I's and crossing the T's, which I think is really required, because at the end of it, there are a lot of typos come, and then the way we use our language, that's another problem for some of us. We speak the language in a certain way, and when we write it, it's not the best of the grammar, really. And so you need somebody else, you need a third eye to tell you that, another pair of eyes, sorry, to tell you that, sorry, this doesn't fall in line with the grammar rules. So I had 2 rounds of editing done for the book. And believe me, that's money, time, and effort that is not wasted. That we really need it. And that is done. And I mean, you feel free to private message me, DM me on Twitter, and I can refer to you. Both these ladies, they've done a wonderful job with my book.
So right. I think the last mile, which is the editing and the proofreading, I think is something that really makes a difference between a draft and a published version. And many times we see, I think, first time authors not appreciate the importance of that, but that's definitely not the case in your book. So there are 2 comments, not questions, but comments. So I'll read them out, and then I'll leave some information for our viewers who want to know more. So from Janvi Krishnan, there's a comment. She says, "It is thought-provoking. It is a thought-provoking novel and a nice portrayal of characters. Anuradha, you've written beautifully, and it has inspired me a lot and this is by Janki Venkateshan." And then Rekha says, "Fascinating insights into the process of writing and a thoughtful commentary on our times. Thank you. It inspires me to get the book and read it." So thank you so much all for your feedback, your questions, and your comments. Before we close, you can follow Anuradha on Twitter at Anuradha_author. You can follow Indic Book Club on Twitter at Indic Book Club, all one word. We are also on Facebook, so facebook.com/groups/Indic Book Club. There are a few thousand people already there, and having a very, very, good set of discussions and posts. So please do follow us on these Twitter handles and Facebook. And thank you again for attending. We will put this Q&A up on YouTube in a few days. So hope to see you again and continue the discussion and conversation. And thank you, Anuradha, once again for coming and answering our questions. And the book, again, is The Friendless God by S. Anuradha. It's been published by Moonlight Books, and it is available on Amazon and other websites. So please go ahead, read it. As I said, it's a wonderful, evocative, moving book. And thank you and have a good day.
Thank you very much. And I'd once again like to thank Abhinav and Indic Book Club, and in fact Indic Academy, because they have played a very big role in giving me a platform. So thank you very much. And to everybody out there, my readers, your support is precious. And to others who want to write, go ahead and write your story. It's worth it.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuradha. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.